You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Okay, who are you and what do we do on this radio program?
This is Shelly. Brad. Oh, Brad. Stop it, Brad.
That is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. I spell it because of the fact that you need that spelling to get to his website, John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T.com. Every single day of his life for the past 22 plus years. It'll be what, 23 in October?
Yeah, 23 in October. That's right.
22 years right now. Every single day he puts together a list of what he feels are the most important stories around the state. Could be public, could be governance, could be just crazy weird stuff. Occasionally he throws in some interesting things, crazy weird things that people have done, but mainly around politics and governance and people that you know from the city hall. And, well, not necessarily, you don't do that much local stuff. You do mainly state stuff, federal stuff, like with Eric Schmitt and things like that, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
We started off every morning. We bring in this guy by the name of...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And John goes on with the show, starting with...
In third place...
A pair of interviews, Brad. I wouldn't call them dueling interviews because they cover much of the same topics, but a pair of interviews featuring State Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. Mary Elizabeth Coleman was on Scott Fawn's midweek update yesterday, based in Jefferson City, and she also appeared on Jason Rosenbaum's Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis Public Radio. And she covered, Brad, a host of issues, including illegal immigrants, a.k.a. aliens, a.k.a. illegals, voting in Missouri elections, how we can ensure that that does not happen in Missouri. She also touched on the abortion ballot initiative and a host of other issues. Again, that's on Scott's show and on Jason Rosenbaum's podcast. Both of those links are up today. I don't have the timestamps up for the individual topics on Rosenbaum's podcast yet. I'll do that after you and I get off the air today at 8 o'clock. So I would suggest folks listen to it. Again, Senator Coleman is in an 8-way primary. Brad, I thought what was interesting is Scott Fawn asked her about your pal Valentina Gomez, and Mary Elizabeth said, Twitter is not a real place. You know, and the difference, and she highlighted the differences between primarily online candidates and candidates that are out there actually meeting voters and doing things out in the real world. She also, Brad, much to the joy of my heart, started the interview by talking about, Scott asked her where she's been, and Mary Elizabeth said, where haven't I been around the state? And Mary Elizabeth pointed out that she is not concerned with efforting metrics, Brad. Those silly, superfluous efforting metrics about how many miles you put on your truck. She's not interested in that. She's interested in going around and talking to the people of Missouri.
Okay, can I make a comment here?
Absolutely.
I think that what she said was somewhat dangerous.
Was somewhat what, Brad? I'm sorry?
Dangerous. I think what she said was somewhat...
Well, why is that?
Well, I think there's going to come a point when, maybe not in my lifetime, but for surely in your lifetime, when the elections will be nothing but social media. And it won't be people actually showing up in places and shaking hands and kissing babies. It'll all be, YouTube videos and things like that. And I don't think you just outhand dismiss someone who has a social media presence and pushes it. Because let's go back to 2016. We had a president who, for a large degree, probably won because of Twitter. And, I think he caught a lot of politicians flat-footed when he effectively used them. And remember, I can't remember the guy's story. His name. There's an interesting story about this guy, and I think he was actually indicted with Trump. He volunteered for when the Trump campaign first started. He volunteered And ultimately, it led to his divorce, and apparently he had a good job in the whole bit. And all he did was follow Trump around. And I remember reading the article that talked about that the other campaigns hired professional photographers and professional videographers. And this guy was just taking pictures with his iPhone and videos with his iPhone and editing them up and putting them on Twitter and Facebook and things like that. And once again, it's sort of my idea of guerrilla marketing. In other words, sometimes the big companies can get clobbered by some little guy who comes along and just says, okay, I can take you guys on. It's a David and Goliath show, and I can win because of the fact that you guys are too slow to move. I'm real quick. I'm using new technology, whatever, and I can beat you. I just don't think you dismiss somebody like that.
Yeah, and I think that, so to your point, Brad, I think that Senator Coleman has a really strong social media presence. I think she documents the places around the state that she visits and the voters that she meets. And I think she pays an appropriate amount of attention to social media and having a social media presence.
But here's where I go back and forth on this. Here's where I say, John, in the course of us doing this show in the last several months, how many times have you sent me links to social media posts by MEC as opposed to what's her face? My mind's not real well today.
And the fact that we say what's her face, Brad, means that it's not effective enough. If you pay attention to Missouri politics more than 95% of the people, and you can't recall Valentina Gomez's name, maybe she should spend more money on social media ads.
That was a faux pas on my part because of the fact that I'm all drugged up. So I apologize.
Well, Brad, listen, you roll into the dispensary every day before you get to the studio.
I'm not thinking straight. Okay, number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
We have entered ethics complaint season, Brad. And what is that? You know, like when you're driving around in the summer and the MoDOT people talk about orange cone season, where you just see orange cones everywhere in construction season. We have entered ethics complaint season, and the Kehoe campaign last week filed an ethics complaint against Jay Ashcroft. Now, this is the second one of note against Jay Ashcroft in the last few weeks. The first one was filed by a Democrat consultant named Jane Duker, and both of the complaints are based on the idea that Ashcroft's PAC is coordinating on messaging with Ashcroft's individual campaign. So you say, John, that seems silly. Why is that a problem? Because under Missouri ethics laws, campaigns for a candidate and candidate PACs cannot coordinate on messaging. They can raise money together, but they can't coordinate on messaging together. So the Kehoe campaign and their legal firm, which is Hush Blackwell, filed a campaign complaint with the Missouri Ethics Commission against Jay Ashcroft. In the last couple weeks, we've also had a complaint filed against Bill Eigel, saying that Bill Eigel has raised too much of a percentage of Bill Eigel's contributions have come from anonymous donors, and that violates Missouri campaign law. So we will see, undoubtedly, we will probably see campaign ethics complaints filed against Mike Kehoe's campaign by the other governor campaigns. And, you know, what you want to do is you want to try to muddy the water a little bit. Anytime you can get the idea of an ethics complaint filed against one of your opponents, it's generally considered a good thing. And everybody can accuse the other campaigns of violating Missouri campaign finance law.
Can I make 2 comments on this?
Please do.
First, the Eigel thing. Doesn't he have sort of the Trump stink? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but the Trump aroma, or whatever you want to call it, of the fact that people won't admit that they are a big Bill Eigel fan because of the fact he's out there. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true or not. I think the basis of, I think the basis of the complaint was that campaigns can file a certain amount of campaign contributions as being anonymous or small dollar contributions. And that I think his opponents just want to point out that he gets a lot of small dollar donations from people around the state. And you'll remember the story from last fall where Bill Eigel was using Donald Trump's name to help him fundraise. And his opponent said that, you know, that it was deceptive campaigning. And so I think this particular allegation is just attempting to carry on that allegation against Eigel, that he's using Trump's name and people don't want reporters to dig into who's actually giving Eigel money.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying 100%, but I think also possibly because of the fact that Eigel has that grassroots appeal to him that I've seen that personally up close and personal.
Sure. I agree with that.
Whereas the other two candidates don't necessarily have, especially Jay Ashcroft and even Mike Kehoe, because he's a big name lieutenant governor. Okay. The other thing I want to mention was I don't remember what it was. This is going to be one hell of a show. Okay.
Hey, we're gonna get through it today, Brad.
Let's move on to number one.
The number one.
Senator Eric Schmitt, once again on Fox News and once again on the Ingram angle, talking a little bit about Biden and immigration. And essentially, Brad, the Biden administration doesn't even believe in real borders. We're going to hear about immigration every day from Republicans going into the general election. In other Eric Schmitt news, I would point out that today is the congressional baseball game. 6 p.m., Brad, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Can you watch it on your local news affiliate? Probably not. But if you're creative, you could probably find a way to watch it online, or maybe even a bootleg version on one of those rogue YouTube channels. Eric Schmitt had a hell of a performance, excuse me, in the congressional baseball game last year, and he's looking to repeat. Last year, he had a bases clearing triple. Now, that's going to be really hard to match, Brad, but he is a top star for the Republicans in the congressional baseball game today. And those are our top three.
How many years ago was it that the nutbag from Belleville went and shot up all the people over there? How long has that been?
Oh, man. Well, that wasn't at the game. That was at a practice, I believe.
That's right. It was at the practice. Okay. It wasn't at the actual game.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Did we do number one?
We did. That was Eric Schmitt.
I'm kidding. Okay. Little background, me not being here yesterday and the day before. Okay. I ended up in the hospital early Monday morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and drove myself to the hospital. Thought I could have been having a heart attack. And after being in the hospital for 2 days, I have pneumonia, of all crazy things.
Oh, Brad, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
And it's just kicking my butt. I feel like, I'm 3 quarts low on blood. You know what I mean? I'm just like sort of like zombie man, sort of. And I got out of the hospital yesterday afternoon, and I did nothing but like just sort of lay around and be unproductive all yesterday afternoon, and watch some TV last night and have absolutely positively no appetite. Up until I ate something last evening for dinner, I had not eaten anything since Saturday afternoon. So it's like, man, I'm just like dragging. So pardon me for some of the situation this morning that I may not be totally on my game this morning. And already you can see that I'm not remembering things like I should, which is maybe some people would say just because I'm old and stupid, maybe that's what it is. But I have been taking some notes. And unfortunately, I took my notes, and I don't know what happened to them because they're in my.
They're somewhere. Maybe
here
they're
we
in the
go.
Hospital, Brad.
Here we go. They're in my notes, and I can't find them. One of which, I want to talk about this situation with NPR. Okay, can we talk about it this segment, or you want to go to the next segment?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, you got to be a little more vague with that, Brad. There's a lot going on with NPR.
Okay. Well, this is wider than NPR. I guess I am getting, first off, I'm going to make a pronouncement right now. I Brad Hildebrand, I'll be, very upfront when I say this. I think our country has a serious problem. You know what the serious problem is?
I don't know.
We have 2 bad candidates running for president. Neither of the candidates are any good, okay? I know the Trump people go, I can't believe, if Tracy was listening right now, oh my God, he's a rhino. There comes a time when people should know when it's time to step aside. And I think both of these candidates suffer from this. And I watched last week when I was off a couple of days, once again, under the weather, I watched the entire D-Day presentation from start to finish, which was many hours long. And I'm telling you, our president doesn't know where he's at. He doesn't know where he's at.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I mean, it's to the point where I've talked about this before. Matter of fact, I got some pushback from this that his wife is being an enabler. Remember we talked about this about 2 or 3 weeks back that she was she was on The View and my husband's the smartest man and me. You know, the Hunter Biden thing. Let's talk about that next break, okay? But here's my read on the situation with what's happening with. Hold on a minute. With what's going on with the Democrats versus the Republicans. And the media, and especially NPR has become complicit in the fact that they are essentially spreading disingenuous information and lies. And case in point, 3 things I want to talk about. First off, on The View recently, the View ladies were talking about the fact that what people don't realize is Donald Trump is already building camps for people when if he becomes elected. He's got these camps where if you didn't agree with him, you're going to a re-education camp. And I'm going
gulag. You're going to a gulag.
I'm going like, okay, whatever. Okay, then what's her face? What's the gal with the big black glasses on MSNBC who
Claire McCaskill.
No. No, she did 5-day-a-week show. She was always anti-Trump.
Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow. She has gone on the warpath, essentially saying she knows that as Trump gets elected, that she will end up in one of these re-education camps, and her freedom will be taken away from her. And I'm going like, I can't even believe what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? I'm thinking to myself, this is like OTT. You know what OTT is?
Yeah, over the top. It's a herbicide application, over the top.
Or it's a form of advertising, OTT. But that's a whole other thing. Okay, it's just crazy time. And it's to the point where you and I look at this and go like, oh, my God, these people are just nuts. But there's a certain number of people who will watch these shows and go, oh, my God, they're going to throw Rachel Maddow in jail if Trump gets elected. And according to the View ladies, they're going to go to a re-education camp. And I'm going like, what in the world are they talking about? And the third thing was, let's take a break, and we'll start off the segment with this. Do you know who Ira Glass is?
Oh, yeah. Is Ira Glass still alive?
Well, he does that show. I don't make sure we're talking about the same guy. He does that show called This American Life. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's an NPR guy, right? Or
right.
At least either NPR or PBS, right?
Well, NPR. I think his is run through WGBR, whatever it is or what's the station up in. The way NPR sort of works is interesting. That not all the programs are produced by NPR, but they're essentially handled distribution by NPR. And he works out of the Chicago station, and he has a very popular show. And once again, another guy who's complained about how he doesn't make any money, but yet he's making millions from his podcasts. But, of course, we can't believe that he's just a lowly paid NPR employee, because of the fact that...
Of course not, no.
So I listened to his show from start to finish on Saturday. Don't ask me why. And normally the shows are really good. Normally they're human interest stories. This one went, as far as I'm concerned, totally off the rails. And the interesting part of it was it got local right here in St. Louis. He did what he says Act 1, if you ever listen to Act 1, Act 2, or Act where, So one of his acts, I think it was the second act, was what caught my attention. He mentions a guy's name. I didn't remember the name, didn't catch my attention as far as the name concerned. And he says, he lives in the suburbs in St. Louis. And I'm going like, okay, you got my attention now. And I tell you what, hopefully that's one of those things that's a cliffhanger where people go, I wonder who he's talking about. Well, you know what? You're going to have to keep listening because we're out of time in this segment, so we'll pick it up the next segment. And I'm going to say the guy's name, and I'm going to see if you know who he is, and I'll tell you the story. Because
all right, can't wait.
Once again, I think this is tremendously disingenuous for NPR to run this kind of programming. And once again, if NPR was owned by Jim Smith, who lived down in South City and was a multimillionaire because he had 14,000 marijuana dispensaries, it's like, hey, Jim, knock yourself out. He had his own radio station. But this is government money. This is the federal government through CPB. This is local money, statewide money through University of Missouri curators, Board of Curators. The people that work at NPR are St. Louis Public Radio, KWMU, are employees of the state of Missouri. They are state employees.
That's right. We pay your salary, pal.
Right. Okay, take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?